that? Yep. Well, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for getting up nice and early. We are here to talk. I think the name of the panel is, yes, how to break the top 5 as an underdog. I think the charts in 2019 are sort of a bit of a strange thing. I think if anyone that sort of follows them pretty closely, most of the real estate goes to the big soundtracks and a couple of big pop stars to round it out. So, I think we're quite surprised to be here having this conversation about a punk band from Bristol at all. But before we get started, just out of curiosity as to who's in the room, can I get a show of hand of who's here from a label, for instance? Anyone? Cool. A few label folks. Management? A couple of managers. Any artists in the room? Yeah? Cool. Well, hopefully you guys find this somewhat relevant. I'm going to spoil it now and say that none of this is rocket science. It really isn't. We just kind of did it sort of one obvious thing at a time. But before we get properly stuck in, I might go around everyone and get them to introduce ourselves. Start with yourself, Mr. Wells.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Hello, everyone. I'm Gregory Wells, and I co-run a radio promotions company called Ghost with my business partner Becky Richardson, who actually isn't here today. So we look after the national radio for IDLES on this album.
Hi everyone, my name's Rob Nancollas, and I'm a marketing manager with a company called Motive Known. We took care of the sort of digital strategy and the advertising side of this campaign.
My name's Ellie Rumbold. I am the international product manager at Partisan. So I was the UK product manager on the IDLES campaign for this record.
Hello. Oh. My name's Mark. I am IDLES manager and have been IDLES manager for just over probably 9 years now. And I've been working with them from the start and work alongside my wife, Lucy, who's been working with me on this probably the last 3 years.
Hi, Tasha, IDLES agent. I'm at CODA for the past 3 years, an agency group before that.
Nice. So there are, it's pretty, oh yeah, that helps. My name's Jeff Bell. I run the UK and European side of Partisan Records label, and yeah, we were fortunate enough to get to work alongside Mark in releasing IDLES' second record, Joys and Active Resistance. But, I guess to sort of set the scene and bring us up to, to how we even got here, I guess it's a bit of a classic saying that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. Had anyone, how many people here were familiar with IDLES, say, 2 years ago, around the time of their first record? Cool. And then, so does that mean for most people it's been since then? That's a good sign. Mark, set the scene for us. So
Hello.
You said you've been working with the band for the better part of, a decade. Yeah. What was it like? And you too, Tash, I know you've been on the train for a while.
Yeah, if people don't know, Tasha is also my sister. So we we worked on this project right from the start. But I know I long time ago played in a band in Bristol. And once that finished and I kind of moved on, I went into the other side of the industry. And I was really good friends with Joe, the lead singer of IDLES. And he'd never been in a band, had anything to do with music before he started IDLES. And when he started the band, he was like, "You got to manage this band, you got to manage this band." And I kind of like tried with a few bands before, and it was never really happened. And I just saw them play their first show, and it was like they were awful, so bad. But there was like they're all over the place. Like Joe was super shy. He couldn't even like look at the crowd. It was like, but there was just something like so special about Joe and the band. And luckily for me, Joe for whatever reasons it was, had the same sort of faith in me as I had in them. And so we just, the last 9 years have kind of grown together, and it's just been like the amount of work that the band and myself have put in over the 9 years has just been like relentless, and it's just been like such a kind of slow growth. I mean, it took them a while to find out who they were. We made mistakes together. We kind of took the wrong paths and tried like playing the game, going through phases of kind of...
Mark and I would go to the pub and have a few drinks and then go back and call them and sing down the phone about how to write a hit for radio, and we were just trying to find any, trying to make them who they weren't. I mean, I'll just add in, obviously I've been an agent for 16 years and worked with Foals and Cage the Elephant and First Aid Kit and all of that. So when you're in the industry, you think you have an understanding, and I'll put my hands up early on. Mark would play me this music, and I was like, there wasn't a place for it. There was feedback, they're too old. You can imagine it's too punk, it's too loud, and I would say the same things. And if there's one thing that has kept IDLES going, it's Mark's unwavering belief when everybody told him that he spoke to in the industry. And I tell you, like, nobody replied to emails, nobody would take calls. It's like, thanks, Mark, hope you're doing well, keep in touch. But Mark just said, these guys are going to be the biggest band, and never, ever lost faith. And I have to say that's something that's quite rare, but as a manager is so important for your artist.
Thanks, Tash.
It's true.
Nice. Very good. No, I mean, the thing for me, like, really, honestly, it was just from the first moment seeing them, and like my pitch, and it's not really a pitch. It was just something that I really, really believed was like, IDLES are going to be like the band of our generation. They're going to be like the Nirvana, the Sex Pistols, the Rage Against the Machine, of our generation. And all through the years, everyone was just looking at me like I was fucking crazy. And they're just like, there's no way. Like, everyone was just like, no way. And I just keep coming back year after year. And like, now I think people are kind of starting to just think, actually, like, there might be something in here, and I still firmly believe it, and it's still gonna happen, and it is just still the beginning for the band. But now we're in a very fortunate position, which we didn't have before. Is actually like having other people in the team that actually believe in them as well. And Partisan Records have been amazing. I mean, Tasha was like, I think you took a little bit like a persuading early on, I mean, I think she had more faith in me than the band, to be honest, early on.
They had, everyone's, as I'm sure you've told, everyone's busy in the industry, and as an agent, you get sent music and it's like, my God, I'm working with 30 bands. So they work with a local agent in Bristol, and I was honest with Mark and I said, look, they need to get out there and play, and Rob,
Yeah, Rob was amazing. There's, it's great, all of us sitting, up here and kind of, like, taking the credit for being, where we are today and with what happened with Joy. But there's so many people along the way, and definitely Rob, who was an agent for IDLES really early on, was like there to be like instrumental and just grafting with the band. And then, for whatever reasons, on both sides, it's been such a like organic, like slow growth to get to this point. We certainly didn't come into this album. I mean, going actually back to Partisan and having belief in the band, everyone that works for this band now is just purely from, real belief in the band. Like, the reason we were in a very fortunate position where after Brutalism, where we ended up putting the record out ourselves, because I fished it round to everyone and no one was interested at all. Like, there was like, I couldn't believe it. We had this incredible record in front of us. There was like our last throw of the dice, really, to be honest. As Tasha said, we tried so many things along the way, and we got so lost, like, trying to play the industry game, like, oh, you need a radio single, you need this, tick the boxes. And as we went along trying to tick the boxes, we just got further and further away and kind of got lost. And then they just did this album where they were like, you know what, fuck all of that. We're just going to do what we want to do, how we want to do it, put it out. So they did that, and still no one was interested. So it's like, well, fuck this, we'll just put it out ourselves. And touring, I mean, they're constantly touring, and it was constantly playing like 20, 30 people a night, 20, 30, you know, maybe 50 next time, maybe 100 next time, maybe 120 next time.
On that note, Mark, obviously just one of the biggest foundations of this band is the live side. Obviously the show is incredible, but there's been a lot of strategy, you know, over the years to get to the point where they're now selling, you know, 20,000 tickets in 20 minutes, you know, for a UK tour. I might just throw back to you, Tash, to kind of talk us through, you know, what the thinking was in the early days.
So after like probably the 50th conversation over the years, I was like, fuck, Mark's definitely, he's onto something. Let's really, you know, and what can be fun, you know, I don't think you need, this is when I pitch, you don't necessarily need a team early on, because what you want to do is have a team to come on board when they're passionate and they love it, and that's when there's a good job. If you do it too early, it can get lost. So Mark and I took advantage of the fact that it was a small team and said, right, we don't have to be beholden to a label or anyone. What do we want to do? Let's set an 18-month strategy for ourselves. And obviously I could share my experience of booking with Foles and everyone else. And I think the main conclusion that we reached was to not focus on UK alone. That's a mistake. A, are the band willing to tour, however, in a van, sleep on friends' floors, just throw everything they can, keep it cheap? Yes. You know, B, do I have an international network of promoters who are willing to invest in the band? Yes. So, I mean, literally, the album came out, was it in May? The first album?
Yeah,
March.
No, it was March.
March.
Yeah.
And literally, like Mark said, we had a UK tour, 30 dates. 4 dates in Switzerland. I mean, we went everywhere. And like Mark said, it was 20 tickets, 30 tickets. But what was really interesting was at the end of the UK run, that was Cardiff, and that sold out and upgraded. And what we were noticing were people were watching the shows, jumping in the cars, going to the next show, talking to their mates. And we were just watching this thing unfold, and we just decided to kind of carry on. I think for me as an agent, I hate booking tours for touring's sake. I think you need to have a plan. Every gig you say yes to, there has to be something that happens after. So every tour we booked, we had the next run in place to announce. And it's just about building momentum. And I mean, I
think that's important. Definitely, you know, IDLES are like incredible live. That's like their best asset. And that's where people really get it and fall in love with it. But it is important, like I really learned from Tasha, you're always looking like 2 shows ahead. Like, don't ever do anything because you can or for the sake of doing it. Just always constantly, like, like, this next move we're doing, where's it going to take us? It's like always looking that step ahead is so important.
And what's been great about IDLES and this, I won't mention other bands I work with, but sometimes you get a new band and you get billings and festivals. I mean, it is, Carly will agree, who's the US agent of IDLES, but one of the pains of an agent is arguing about billing on a poster and artwork for a new band. And when kids see acts playing on posters, they don't care who's where. So what I loved about IDLES, they just said yes. They said, Tasha, do you think it's worth doing? Let's do it. So like I had them playing Bilbao up against the headliners, but there were like 30 people in a mosh pit circle. They just wanted to get out there and play, and it's an absolute pleasure. And what happens is the nicer the band are and more willing, and it's so nice to work with a manager
who's on side, you know, where we're working together as a team. So we just went for it, and actually promoters are emailing back going, best band ever, they're so lovely, what can we do? And there is something to be said for being respectful and nice when you're on the road as well. Not only a great band, but how you treat people, because there are thousands of bands now, aren't there? And I think IDLES are just one of the nicest boys as well.
And I think that point you made about, you know, people would go to a show, then they'd collect friends, go to the next one, and that kind of community that was building around the band, I think is probably, you know, right there next to the live show in terms of, you know, the foundation for IDLES. So let's fast forward a bit. You guys put out a record yourself. It went very well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I just sat down with Joe and I was like, no one wants this record, let's just put it out ourselves. And so we had absolutely, I mean, we still have Bally Records, which we use to kind of help other bands that are starting out, but we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. So we just kind of got some vinyl pressed up, you know, no barcodes, no like, nothing. It was just
£12 a track to master it.
Yeah. 12. It's everything as cheap as possible. Like 12. It sounded awful. It was like it was done really badly. Like everything was compromised. Like the artwork was all wrong. Like anyway, we put it out and we got it out there, and like we were like, let's just print 500. We'll just get it out there, something to sell, and it just sold out on the day. And then I'm like, oh Jesus, like we've got to print more, you know, and we're actually not happy with all these bits, but let's print another 1,000. And then it's like, let's print another 1,000. But I have absolutely no idea how many we sold, because none of it was registered, none of it was like counted, but it was just like getting it, you know, it was just like flying out. And then luckily, you know, with going with Partisan, they've actually like made it sound how we wanted it to sound. And although everyone's trying to get hold of the old record, of course, rather than the new remastered one, but it was like it was just kind of connected and did its thing.
And then so, you know, that kind of brings us up to basically this time last year. You know, the band had wrapped up 2017 with you know, an amazing sort of slate of press looks, you know, kind of all their album of the year, you know, mentions, really solid touring plot, a fan base that was, you know, buying merch, buying albums at shows in really good numbers. When it came to actually working with a label and even sort of starting that conversation, you know, I mean, why work with a label at all at that point? You guys had sort of done so much heavy lifting.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was like, I think going with the label, it's just, we kind of had everything really like rolling really well in kind of Europe and the UK especially. But for us, like, it's like IDLES are a global band, like they which we're finding, like they're not just a UK band. They're not. This is like a global band, and you know, really early on, and still a lot of people like they'll never connect in America. America just aren't going to get it. Like it's too UK centric. It's like the lyrics are not going to understand it. It's like, but which obviously I didn't agree with any of that. So it was like finding, you know, this. It's like I don't know what I'm doing as a label. I mean, marketing side, we didn't even on Bally and on Brutalism, we didn't even spend £1 on a sponsored post. Like there was no marketing whatsoever. So that was something else that we didn't know how to do or how to do it. But the main thing was like, just finding other people that believed, and it was really Tim, who owns the labels, would you say, and Zena, who helps run it, were just like, had to work on this new record. It was like I've never seen, and the way Tim talked was like, It was like I was talking to someone else, and I'm just like, chill out, Tim. It's like, I know they're good, but so he was just completely got it. It was just complete. He was the first person that, or label, or anyone that didn't sit down with me and they're like, so tell me about the streaming numbers and tell me about the how many Facebook followers have you got? And it's just like, it's not that, it's not that. It's just like, it's something, special. It's just something that you believe in or you don't. And they got it. And it was amazing to have someone else that excited about the band as well. And it's like, it can be really insular. And, I've been doing this, working with my wife on this for a long time. And it's like, you've got nothing to share, nothing to, and it was great seeing other people excited, and it made absolute sense to do it. And it was obviously there's no way we could. I'll be sitting here today with a top 5 record. That wasn't even anything that we planned anyway.
It wasn't at all. And I think that's sort of part of the interesting thing. As we were sort of developing it, we had this community, and we needed to make sure that going into the second record, we could grow that community in a way that didn't lose what made the community so interesting to begin with. So the band delivered the record they had to, which I think is kind of what this all boils down to. A great band delivering a great record exactly, at the right time. Ellie, let's talk a little bit more about kind of just the mechanics of the granular stuff of setting up this second record with all that in mind.
Well, I think one of the most important things was the actual album that IDLES delivered. So hands up to everyone here who's actually listened to the record, the latest record. Nice, healthy number. So the album is called Joy as an Act of Resistance. And I think when IDLES delivered the record, it definitely made everyone at the label kind of just absolutely stop dead in their tracks. The album itself deals with all sorts of subject matters. It deals with toxic masculinity, love, self-love, Brexit, class, grief. And I think that was the main thing that kind of brought everyone together. And that message, it became very apparent to everyone in the team that one of our biggest goals was to kind of create a platform for the band to grow on and spread that message. And so through that, our biggest goal really in the campaign was to gain visibility, and to do that was to achieve a high chart placement.
So
can I just want to say, because that it kind of I just want to make it clear, it's not something that was planned by the band. It's not something that they sat down and what are the hottest topics of today and what's going to sell records? Because you get people along the way going, they're just talking about things that are kind of relevant now. But the thing is, it's the record was written and recorded a year. People don't realise probably a year and a half, almost 2 years before all of that. So I think if you're trying to do something, if someone's going to start writing an album about toxic masculinity, Brexit, all those sort of things now, in 2 years, it's going to be something else. So it's definitely it definitely wasn't a marketing idea at all from the band. It just happens, all of these things, I think, which you'll find as this goes along, it's just about how everything just aligns, and it was just it being an incredible record that just spoke to a lot of people, now at that time, and it's just about all those
unity,
pieces.
I think, brings people together.
And I guess to sort of, tie that bit up, the top 5 element of this campaign, I think, was never about the sales number, however many units it was. It was about what the statement of a punk band from Bristol getting a top 5 album, what other opportunities that would come from that, what sort of, how many heads it would turn, and, it would show, I think all these themes we're talking about had a real cultural and in some ways commercial relevance as well.
And I'm part of a lot of teams and meetings, and a lot of the time you go in and everyone's going through the motions and trying to impress the boss with, oh, I'm doing this and ticking these boxes. I've never been part of a team where people are genuinely excited and just want goodwill. And I mean, you'll go on to the AF gang, but with buying the record, it's actually more than a top 5. It was just getting involved, and it's like, honestly, it's about, I would say, you find a team that get it and take the time and that have the passion, because that makes a world of difference.
So moving away from the philosophical and kind of more into the scientific, practical is probably a better word, definitely not a science. There's a reality of charting. I just said it wasn't about selling a bunch of units, but, you do need to sell a bunch of units to get into the charts. And, some of the ways we started to think about this before the announce of the record was, I mentioned before, we had a very heavily physical buying audience, and that was, something we really wanted to tap into. So Ellie, I'm going to throw it back to you and sort of talk us through the different formats we had and why that's important.
So knowing that we had this strong physical buying audience, we knew that it was to be a very kind of product-heavy campaign. So we did a few different formats, but we did an initial pressing of pink LPs. We did like a beautiful kind of pale pink 1 LP package. And we did, I think, 6,000 units for the UK initially for that. Joe then did an incredible, it was a 12-page insert, like gold glitter, die-cut sleeve, deluxe LP. And we did about 3,000 for the UK for that. And then we did a Rough Trade exclusive orange LP, because we were Rough Trade's album of the month for September. So we did 2,000 units of that for the UK. And then we did CDs as well, I think about 8,000?
To start off with,
initially, yeah. And so with all of those kind of, I guess, going into like the D2C aspect of it, we had all of these formats to consider, and we kind of quickly established that the D2C was to play like a really strong part in the campaign. So I won't jump ahead too much to kind of our announcement, but we basically teamed up with Music Glue and formed like a huge range of merch and ticket bundles with them, with the aim of kind of capitalizing on the band's strong ticket on sale. But that was really successful.
And just to sort of explain that a little bit more, what would mean, we announced, we will jump ahead to the announce actually. I think that's sort of the next, kind of pivotal moment in this campaign. We had a number of tools to kind of launch everything with. We were announcing a new album. We were announcing, with a new song and a video, really strong song, really strong video. We're announcing a world tour. And sort of wanted to just create a really big moment, at press, amongst the fans, just in general. And so, there were these bundles you could buy through D2C, and one of those was, you buy a ticket and you could upsell, buy a ticket to any of the shows, the UK shows, and upgrade to a, throw an album format in there as well. And you want to talk about how kind of well that was received?
Yeah, and we should say as well, you touched on this, but it was really important to us that we made these like strictly opt-in bundles. I know that we talked about this when we were kind of like planning the campaign, but just we didn't want fans to face a situation where they had to buy a copy of the record to then see the band live. So we kept these really strictly opt-in, but we saw one of the highest rates of upsells that Music Glue had ever seen, I think, with it was 1 in 3 customers pre-ordering some kind of format of the record at checkout when they were buying a ticket. So it was incredibly successful. I think we shifted over like 700 pre-orders across the first day in the first 24 hours of launching.
And to create some numerical context on that, I think by this point, Brutalism had done about 8,000 albums in the UK. But that was over the course of, a year and a half, essentially.
Yeah.
And so if we were going to sort of scrape the top 10, we needed to basically get every single one of those sales to happen in 1 week. So that was kind of the approach that informed most of our decisions. Greg, I'm going to hand over to you now. So one thing that had sort of been missing from this point, was a real promo strategy, I think, and media positioning of the band, intentional media positioning of the band. Obviously come out of the Brutalism campaign with a couple of key supporters at radio and that kind of thing. But talk us through how you approached it from your world.
Yeah, so I think I have to give some credit to the previous plugger who worked on the first album, which I didn't work on. But looking back on the last album, you could obviously see that the band had some solid foundations and had kind of sort of dabbled on the fringes of rotation. They weren't really a kind of core act at any station. I think people that had fans, but no one had really kind of took them to that kind of next level. So as I was looking at the campaign, I kind of always wanted to sort of think, well, how can we take this band from being this kind of band on the fringes of sort of doing something quite great to being that kind of core band at a station? And I think I always knew they had it in them, and I think that I'm not all about trying to play the game too much with a band. I don't want them to make a radio single. I want people to kind of appreciate it for what they are, and I think it's almost great to challenge people, and I think that a lot of that come into our strategy. I think we launched probably what I would argue one of the most challenging tracks on the album, and to me that excites me, and I want to sort of tell people what a band is rather than giving them kind of what they want. I feel like you need to sort of take them on the way there to get to the album, and then maybe kind of play it a bit safer as you get closer to the kind of key points. But for me, it was all about building from those foundations, making sure the people that had supported them before felt there was still loyalty there, because that's super important with a band like IDLES. They, just like they have that relationship with their fans, they have the same relationship with the media. And there's lots of people like Steve Lamacq being a prime example, who he been very loyal to the band and very, very supportive. Steve Lamacq's at BBC Six Music Drive Time, and he, by me coming on board, I think, there was always a sense of nervousness that I would take it away from him and kind of give it to everyone else, but it wasn't about that. It was about building from him into kind of bigger, higher tiers, I guess, and that's really kind of what shaped the strategy for the band. And for us, it was like building really solid foundations at a station like BBC Six Music, which have been really core to this band and has a listenership of people that buy records and buy tickets. And then moving into other areas like Radio 1, which had little bits of, and by the end of the campaign, we'd had an edition on Radio 1, which is, for punk bands these days, is very rare, especially independent ones, and 3 A-lists on Six Music, so it felt like, we'd really able to take them up a sort of tier and to a sort of, a core band at a station like Six Music.
Cool. So, we've announced the record. We've got some radio support. End of day one, it's probably early June. We have done, about 700 units, like Ellie said. We had picked a release date, the end of August, which was a little bit strategic as well, I think, just kind of getting that tail end of the summer before some of the major frontline releases are hitting the market, just so there's a little less competition at the top of the chart. So we've got sort of promo. We'll get to digital in a sec. Rob, not ignoring you. We kind of just wanted to go through the basics, for a normal indie campaign. It was promo. We had, our advertising. It was pretty straightforward. And then retail. So let's start with retail. We'll go to retail next. Obviously, the indies were going to be a big supporter from the get-go. Your Rough Trades, your Piccadilly, just kind of Resident, all those key ones, plus the little guys out regionally. Ellie, do you want to talk us through what the strategy at indie retail specifically was to try and bump this pre-order number?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we did was we announced an entire tour based around record stores to take place the week that the album came out. So we had the band playing, I think, 10 in stores over release week. They played Rough Trade East, West, Nottingham, Bristol. They played Banquet, Spillers, Action, Crash. They played all over the place.
And what was great with this label is, obviously, you have live shows on sale, and it's about communication. So we made sure that when that was the idea, we felt it was a good idea. We got in touch with the promoters to make sure that they were on board. Again, it's about making sure that everyone's on side. So maybe if there are a few tickets left to sell, we use the in-stores to promote it. And yeah, it was, usually it's like we see stuff announced and we're just like, oh my God, it's in the same city. And again, it was just working together timing wise.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid point. Like, I worked incredibly closely with James, who's Tasha's assistant.
Superman.
He is amazing, and I probably spoke to him like 10 times every day for about 6 months, and we would just. I think that's so important to the success of this campaign, was we worked so closely on the live side and the recorded side, in terms of our marketing and our strategy, and everything was just in sync, and it meant that we were going at it together.
And just from announcing the in-stores overnight, I think the pre-order number, we worked very closely with PS, our distributor, by the way, through all of this. And I think overnight, from announcing that in-store tour, we saw the pre-orders jump about another 1,000 albums.
It was like 1,800 records.
Yeah.
They all sold out within a week. And so with all of those additional pre-orders combined across all the stores, it was another 1,800 or 1,900 sales.
So outside the indies, it was kind of just a matter of then picking off each retail account one by one, and making sure we were supporting them in every way possible, whether it was giving them something exclusive. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so obviously we couldn't do in-stores in every single record shop in the country. So for all the indies that we didn't do in-store performances in, we had Joe design a really amazing kind of, it was like a pink Superman. Yeah, and we basically printed this really cool print onto 12-inch cardboard inserts, and we had the band sign 500 of these prints. We drove down to Bristol, and the band signed 500 of these prints, and then we spent the kind of weekend like packing them all up into bundles of like 5 or 10, and we posted them to every single remaining record store in the country. So basically every indie shop in the UK either had an IDLES performance, or they had these like super exclusive limited sign prints that they could then, entice more pre-orders and fans. And it just, we definitely saw engagement on socials with people kind of like traipsing around record stores trying to get their hands on these prints. So that worked really, really well.
And then just some other accounts like Record Store and HMV and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So then with the indies taken care of, we kind of basically tackled the rest. So with HMV, we offered them like a lot of editorial work. This is back in the days where HMV was as strong as it was. But we had Joe do kind of like 2 key interview features for the HMV magazine, and we did like CD and LP bundling with them, so we saw a lot of support from them. Record Store, we offered them exclusive signed, we did the signed deluxe vinyl, so we had Joe sign, we had the whole band sign, I think 300 units of that, and that all sold out within like a week. And then FOP, we teamed up with them and we printed staff T-shirts. So we basically made about 500 T-shirts, and it had the IDLES artwork on the front and then the FOP logo on the back. And we sent these T-shirts around to all of their stores in the country, and they were worn by staff like the month of August, or the month of September, basically around album release.
Yeah, so kind of, I guess by the time we'd done the bulk of the retail marketing, or this kind of brings us to kind of like mid-July, so we're sort of halfway through the campaign. Yeah. We're at about 3,000 pre-orders, aiming to, to get in the top 10, we'd need to do about 7,000 by the end of week 1. So this was all good and well. We'd sort of super served the fan base, the existing fan base. All the retail channels were taken care of. If it was going to sort of go up a level in any way, we needed to start bringing in new fans. And, one thing Mark mentioned before, the band, hadn't even sponsored a post by this point. So this is kind of the obvious segue into digital marketing, and the world that has opened, for the band. Again, had to be done in a way that was true to the band's vision for the record, and true to the community that existed, and didn't feel too marketing-y. So, Rob, you kind of came into the team fresh at this point. Yeah. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so a big part of the campaign, I think, both pre and post-release, was focusing the ads more around content engagement and retention rather than pushing a sales message. And so tiering fans from, a first passive listener up to, sort of super fan, creating these sort of content funnels in which we set sort of thresholds of engagement for someone to pass to the next stage. So by the time these new fans got down to, the core remarketing audience, they were highly engaged, highly reactive, and I feel this had, a big impact when it came to the out now phase in terms of sales. I think the best thing about this campaign was that there was the fact there were so many just real world moments with the band, whether it was in the playlist editions, scaling all the way up to the Brits and Jules. So it meant an opportunity online to run a series of hyper-targeted sort of capsule advertising campaigns, targeting these audience members and kind of drawing them into IDLES' world. And with that, a big part of it was working with Jess and Ellie to create sort of tailored content for each of these fans. And I think that's something we're still carrying on now. And ultimately, we tried where we could to mirror the sort of authenticity element of the band, never pushing too hard of a sales message. But I think that just shows framing all of your advertising in that way will ultimately result in some good commercial success.
Because, just like, for me, it's all, and the band, it's really important, like, all these things that are happening, it's like you're not trying to sell something. We're not selling a product to people. What I want is for new people to discover this band, because I'm confident that it's like once you discover this band, and like that's all the selling you need to do. So it's like it's that balance, isn't it?
Definitely.
Of like, with the Brits, a great example. I mean, we had a little slip up on that one, but where it's a fine balance, between. I mean, it's my fault. That's right. It's like it's such a fine balance, isn't it? Of kind of like doing the sell and doing the push. I just want people to discover this band, and the Brits an incredible opportunity for us, but we're not. Yeah, so for example, like for the Brits, for us, like it's incredible to be part of it and part of the conversation, and that's the best we could ask for in a situation like that. Yes, they don't fit. Yes, it's not a cool look for them. Should they be involved with it? I would say, why shouldn't they? It's like it's great, but we're not going to actively go out and go vote for us to win the Brits, and like big marketing campaign, which is what these majors do. And I'm not going to say any names, but you can look to see who won the category we were in and work it out yourselves. But there was a huge, like, I know someone who was very involved with the campaign, who really put a lot of money and manpower and people behind winning something like that to push records further down the line. I mean, they even changed the date of their album release to coincide with their possible win of a Brit Awards, and as soon as that awards won, suddenly all the content's there, ready to push, the big sell, the big marketing thing. And this is not anything how we would ever approach anything or have ever approached anything, because I think the biggest selling point for the band is the band. That's it. The music, the performance, the way they come across as people in interviews, the way they are with promoters and agents and people in the team. They're just great people to be around. And I think that's just formed a lot of goodwill. And for us being like at it for so long as well, it's kind of people are kind of wanting to see us do well, because they've seen
the
like
goodwill is a really good point. And I think sort of on the digital marketing strategy side, it was all about there are a lot of people that had by this point heard the name of the band, weren't really sure what was going on. So the content we were using was based on the Colossus music video, which is really strong visually, and we were sort of interplaying that with all the press that was running by this point. There was extremely strong press. The reviews were kind of all 4 stars, all 9 out of 10s, that kind of thing. And so just kind of tying that sort of press validation, you know, with the album visuals and targeting that at people that might have been exposed to the band name at some point to just try and, you know, get some context. This brings us to August, a couple weeks out from the album, probably less. We're at about 4,000 album pre-orders by this point, so we're just trying to milk every single thing that we can. There was so Ellie mentioned the deluxe version of the album. Do you want to talk a bit more about the pop-up store and the gallery exhibition?
Yeah, so we had this. I guess we should touch on the visuals maybe as well. This is just something that I think is really integral to the campaign as a whole. Is Joe has the most incredible eye for design, and he was able to kind of very early on in the campaign lay out the artistic foundations for us, meaning that we were able to work really closely with a designer to kind of create all of these assets, whether it be, you know, digital ads, outdoor marketing, retail marketing, whatever it was. And his vision was really, it was subtle, but it was very clever. And so some examples where everything featured gold glitter, which is like the very opposite of toxic masculinity. Everything featured rainbows, which is, you know, an all-encompassing symbol of pride and equality. Everything featured tones of baby pink, which is, again, typically a feminine colour, but perfect for every male embracing his feminine side. And so I think that was just, that kind of all tied in so well with the whole message. But going back to the deluxe LP that he did, we had this, I didn't really explain it very well earlier, but it had interchangeable artwork. So it had 12 different prints where you could change the artwork, and with a die-cut sleeve. And each piece, there was a piece of artwork for each track on the record, plus 2 bonus tracks that didn't make the record. So I think we had 14 pieces of art in total. And these pieces of art actually existed. So Joe had commissioned like friends of his, whether they be musicians or friends, his girlfriend, you know, fans, to create a piece of art for each track that they had written. And so by the time we got to August, Joe kind of presented this idea to us and said, you know, can we make an actual exhibition in London? So the week running up to album release, we put on an exhibition in London. It was up in Hoxton, and we had it running for 3 days. The first night was kind of, we had it open for the band and family and friends and press and stuff like that. And then we had the exhibition open for the 2 days to the public. It was an amazing thing to see. It was amazing to kind of create this proper world for the deluxe package to live in. And we had, I think, you know, we had maybe 500 people across the 3 days attend. Yeah, it was just a really special thing to see, I think.
Yeah, it just kind of brought the album to life. We had fans sort of traveling from, you know, Europe and other places to come see it. And the timing-wise, right on album release, I just think kind of it made the record tangible for a lot of people, I think. And, you know, and not only that, we were actually selling. It was like the physical, the deluxe piece brought to life. And so we were selling it there as well. We'd worked with the OCC to make sure that those sales counted as well. So, you know, and that went right into release day. And, you know, to bring us up to release day, August 31st, we kicked off the week at 5,000 pre-orders. So still had a lot of work to go by this point. So I'll run through the week pretty quickly because I just got the 5-minute pre-question warning. But, you know, at that point, it was just every day sort of getting the midweeks in the morning, figuring out, you know, what stores still had stock available. The band would post about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, another 80 units would fly out the door. Or, you know, we sent 20 random signed LPs to their D2C and they'd post about it, you know, and then they'd disappear. And just, you know, ratcheting up these units one at a time. Obviously, the in-stores played a big part in that week. There were 2 a day. So, you know, and just all the you know, excitement that was generating. We were running extensive outdoor campaigns at this point. There were billboards in London, regionally, ads in the Tube. You know, we kind of wanted to concentrate all the visibility into this one point. And, you know, on the Saturday morning, if it wasn't for a surprise Eminem album, you know, Joy would have been the #1 record, you know, in the first midweeks. And I mean, Greg, for you, you know, that sort of early charting position. How did that help, your conversations going forward?
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, like, one thing I would say, it's not the be-all and end-all. Like, that's one thing I don't work on huge amounts of top 5 albums, so it's not like something I use as the only way to get through the door. But for more kind of mainstream platforms, a top 5, coming in midweek number 2 is huge. I distinctly remember myself and my business partner Becky, we had a meeting with Chris Price, the head of music at Radio 1. I think it was literally the day or 2 after we found out about the midweek, and to bring that up, that really, we can have all the specialists play, all the promo, all the kind of things going on, but to say this is real, this is happening, this is connecting, there's no better metric than that. You can have all the Facebook you likes in the world, you can have in the world, but if you're coming in the midweek, that's real stuff, and to see that is a huge look at radio, and I'm sure at press too. And so I distinctly remember they added the track to the Radio 1 playlist in the following week, and that just shows you we can do everything we can, but that final kind of tick there kind of allowed them to think, okay, we can really take this seriously as a commercial proposition. And Radio 1 have to be careful because there's not a lot of space on that playlist, and that you're competing with Ariana Grande, whoever else it is going on that week. So for them to really sort of see that allowed them to sort of think that this is a real thing. And
so by Friday morning it was 11,000 units sold, so it had been a very busy week from everyone involved, and the fan base themselves being part of the story and sharing with each other, being like, if go buy another record. If you haven't, it's only 4 tunes on iTunes. It's, it's instead of a coffee, and...
Can I just mention, outside of in-stores as well, if you can plan far and ahead as an agent, you suggest to the manager, look, we've got these shows, let's hold back these number of tickets that people can use towards the pre-sale of the album. Again, it was always an opt-in, but one thing as an agent or as a band is when things are great, it's great, and you can tend to get a bit. Some people can get a bit overexcited and want to convince Radio 1 that this is a big band. I mean, we could have done more than 3 electric ballrooms. We could have gone massive, but we just, again, tried to stick true to who IDLES were, to who Joe is, to who the band are, what they're about. And we just decided to, hold back, do the rooms that the fans would want to see them in, but again, work closely to make sure that at least a percentage of these shows can go towards the albums as well.
We could talk about this for a lot longer. There's still a lot we haven't even sort of touched on, but we would want to, we do want to leave it open to some questions if anyone has any. Yep. I think there's a mic coming.
I mean, can I just say, like, after the last sort of 20 minutes of talking or 30 minutes, like, this is why we signed to a label, because I wasn't going to do all of that.
Yep.
How important do you think the Afghan was in getting the record sold?
Extremely. Mark.
Yeah, huge. Like, it's like the Afghan, it started, I mean... God,
just for those that aren't aware, yeah. Afghan is a Facebook group that started, a bit over a year ago with a few hundred members. It's now pushing 20,000, but it's just a genuine community of people that have bonded over, not just IDLES music, but, the concept of IDLES. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it has nothing to do with us whatsoever. It's not, a lot of everything that happens with IDLES is just been like a real natural thing. It's not anything that was planned. It was Lindsay Melbourne who started it, who's an amazing photographer, and when she was, I don't know if she was kind of starting out doing music photography, we just really connected, and she connected with the bands, and she did some of those real early key press shots for us, and then she just started this Facebook group. And it just grew into this, like, and we're really close to the admins, just as friends, and it's just like everything from is so important for me, and which means it's important to the band that everyone that's working on this project or involved in this project is like a family thing. It's like it's just like
Yeah, it's just so it feels like a family, and you know the Afghan are very much an extension of that. And when it came to the record being out, I mean, they all just rallied behind each other to like, I mean, everyone's buying like 2-3 copies of each album, and it's just genuine excitement. And like, it wouldn't have been anything like, well, it would have been something, but it wouldn't have even been, you know, it was a huge part to getting this top 5 record.
The message behind that being, you know, the Afghan coming, you know, to their own realization that if they can, you know, get the band to this top 5, as seemingly arbitrary as a charting position is, it you know, like Greg was saying, it can get the band on Radio 1, which takes this message of, you know, all is love to an even, you know, bigger group of people, and that's essentially, you know, was the thinking behind everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's you know, we're always teetering like on the edge, because there is always there's that thing, you know, which I know they have the worry as well, as much as we have the worry, is like, because this thing is getting so big, it's like, are you going to lose that connection, and how do you keep that connection? But I just think by us, it's like we're just going to keep building really slowly, and just bring everyone along with us. So I think it's not just going to, like, we could, you know, as you say, we know what we're worth ticket wise, like in the background, and we could at some point. Yeah, but it's like it's convincing the band, and it has to feel right. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, it was like they were huge, and they'll always be like a big part of everything we do, and they're just growing with us as well. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi. What was your streaming strategy?
It's a great question. It's something we haven't even touched on today, but in a nutshell, it was avoiding the big playlists, your New Music Fridays, that kind of thing, because you know, punk music in general has a pretty high skip rate when you're dealing with fans of pop and that kind of thing. So we were targeting the more niche playlists where people were going to those playlists to listen to a band like IDLES. They'd save it to their library. They, you know, wouldn't skip. They'd repeat listen. They'd share it, and that in turn boosted the algorithm. You know, that sort of took IDLES. When we started the campaign, it was 60,000 monthly listeners. By the time the record came out, it was 650,000. So that was the short answer. That was it. But there was
and it was quite funny with the fans, because obviously they did really want to help. So for them, it was buying a physical record, and it was actually educating and chatting to Afghan and everyone, saying no, streaming isn't getting something for free, but it's actually helping the band as well. So a lot of people weren't streaming because they thought, actually, that's not helping the band. I'm going to buy the record. So it's like re-educating the team on what's going to help, which is everything, isn't it?
Anyone else?
Hey, I'm just wondering how the band supported themselves on that first album, on the tour. Like, did they hemorrhage cash, or was it self-sufficient?
Money-wise,
yeah,
there was no support whatsoever. I mean, we literally, saying that we have survived. We are only here today because of merch, because of T-shirts, because I can see one T-shirt over there. Because that's really how the fans have been able, you know, for so long you're doing shows like for so little money. I mean, you're literally barely covering your costs. You're really not covering any costs, and certainly the band aren't making money. But a big thing was really the T-shirts. Joe designs all of his T-shirts, and it was a massive thing for us really early on that was going to be like a big thing for the band, and it has been for a long time. And the merch is, you know, still something that's a massive part of the band. But they all worked. I think, you know, we really. I mean, right up until
they kept their jobs to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, they've only really, you know, probably got any sort of money maybe a year and a half ago. Apart from that, they all had their own jobs. And you know, Bowen being a dentist, and most of the other guys I made sure, you know, I got all my fillings sorted on his last day.
You should check out his dentist
free.
photo if anyone
Mate,
sees
it's
it as well.
amazing. Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Time for one more question.
No, I've got nothing to add. No.
Just I was going to say early on with touring, you know, you don't have to do 30 days together for it to make sense. If the guys are working, you sit down. Again, it's the beauty of not having a team or anything or any pressure. When are you guys working? Should we just do weekend shows? Should we do drivable weekends? So it's like to Cardiff and back, to Portsmouth and back.
Yeah.
Will they sleep on people's floors? You know, it's literally everything and anything, and just testing the waters.
It's definitely the hardest time for a band. You know, I'm fortunate now because I am managing full time to be able to work with some other bands at really early stages, and it is the hardest time when you're in a band because you know, how do you? This is why the industry now. It's most of the bands that are doing well are from quite a privileged background, just purely because they have, you know, money that can support them touring. Maybe they don't need to work. Maybe they have a family member that can help finance them, and it's really, really hard, and it's hard to kind of balance the two. It's actually the hardest part of being in a band and trying to break as a band, because it's so hard to make any sort of money in the industry. And I think you've touched on it earlier, like with a band like IDLES, it works so well because everything is so tangible, and it's like, but I can, you know, for the streaming age that it is now, and just throwing out singles out there and stuff, it's hard. And I think it's hard between the band because you have all the like commitment issues with regards to like trying to make your job work around. You know, it was hard with Bowen. As I say, he's a dentist. You know, he's going to have a lot more of a commitment compared to John, who's working in a coffee shop or in a bar. Or so yeah, it's a really, really hard thing to balance. But I think merch, I think for people who support bands and support musicians, that's one of the best ways to be able to support a band. Is if you go to a show, you know, the promoter from really early on is probably the one walking out with the money that day. That's it. But if you can just go buy a CD, buy a T-shirt, just anything, like just buy that one thing from the merch stall, that's what's going to enable the band to do the next show, to put some money into a recording session, to be able to do those sort of things. So that's the kind of one thing I would stress for people that find a young band that they really support. Just go and buy a T-shirt, buy some merch. That's what's going to kind of help them survive.
Even when you have a top 5 record, merch still helps. Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. That's, you know, we're around if anyone wants to ask us anything. But hopefully there was some interesting points in there. But again, the point we're trying to make is it's not rocket science. It came down to a band just making a great record with a great vision, and we were here to kind of like facilitate that. So thank you.